Professor of Cell Biology and Physiology, Brigham Young University, Dr. Benjamin Bikman.
Good morning. I am so happy to be with you. For the next hour, I'm going to pretend that I am your professor and that you are my students. Of course, I am also a scientist, and that's what I want to speak with you about today, to share with you the newest science. And with that new science comes a new number. And the newest science shows us that the biggest health problem around the world is poor metabolic health. Almost half of all adults around the world have a metabolic problem called insulin resistance. I have devoted my career to understand insulin resistance, and this is what I want to share with you today. This is what I want to teach you as my students. Most people are very surprised to learn that in this part of the world, in South Asia and Southeast Asia, poor metabolic health and insulin resistance is very common. Too often, we think that bad metabolic health is only a problem in America, but it's just as bad, if not worse, in Southeast Asia. But why is insulin resistance so common here? Especially when in America, people are so much fatter than they are in Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, people have less fat, but there's more insulin resistance, and it is because of how we store fat. Now, over the time we have together, I'm going to share with you some questions, and I want you to be very good students and pay attention, because these are questions your friends may ask you. So you may talk to your friend and tell your friend that they maybe have insulin resistance, and then your friend will ask you, what is insulin resistance? To understand insulin resistance, let me introduce you to the hormone insulin. Insulin is a hormone that comes from a part of our body called the pancreas. And when our blood sugar levels start to go up, then insulin will be released into our blood in order to bring the blood sugar levels back to normal. So now that you know what insulin is, now you can teach your friend what insulin resistance is. And so I'm going to here we have a cell, and this could be any cell of the body, muscle cell or brain cell or anything. And when insulin moves through the body, it will come to the cell and it will knock on the door of the cell, and the cell will do something. The most famous or most well-known effect of insulin is to help glucose levels or blood sugar come from the blood into the cells of the body. However, sometimes the cell stops listening. This is what happens when the cell has insulin resistance. And if insulin cannot work very well, then blood sugar starts to go up. And if insulin isn't working well, then insulin goes up. We need more insulin than we did before. So now you teach your friends, when you teach about insulin resistance, you say there's two things to know about insulin resistance. The first is that some of the cells of the body are not responding very well to insulin anymore. And the second part is that within the entire body, insulin levels are going higher and higher. Now, insulin resistance is a big problem because it contributes to almost every chronic disease. If you have a friend who is worried about heart disease, they should worry about insulin resistance. Also, if you have a friend who is worried about Alzheimer's disease, their brain not working very well, they should also be worried about insulin resistance. Even other problems like infertility are problems also of insulin resistance. However, the most well-known problem with insulin resistance is diabetes. So I want to just talk about diabetes for just a moment. Usually, when we talk about diabetes, we just talk about blood sugar, and we look at their blood sugar levels going up over time. However, in order to truly understand insulin resistance, we need to focus more on insulin, not just blood sugar. And when blood sugar levels are normal, but insulin has to work harder, this is insulin resistance. And it is only when the body becomes very insulin resistant, now the blood sugar levels start to go up, and then we call it diabetes. Now you have taught your friend what insulin resistance is, and your friend may ask you, but how does insulin resistance start? And you tell your friend, insulin resistance starts in fat cells. And then when the fat cells become insulin resistant, it starts to spread the insulin resistance to other parts of the body, like the liver or the muscle or more. However, we still don't know how the fat cell first becomes insulin resistant, and it's all about how the fat cell grows. And when insulin is high for a long time, the body becomes more insulin resistant. And when insulin is elevated, fat cells must grow. We will talk more about this in just a moment, but if you have a friend who has more fat than they want, you tell them it's because your insulin is too high. And when insulin is high, it can tell our fat tissue to grow through two different ways. Our fat tissue can grow through hypertrophy or hyperplasia. If our fat tissue is growing through hypertrophy, that is because every individual cell starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So in this case, the fat cells are very big. However, it can be different where rather than the fat cells growing in size, they can instead grow in number. And this explains why in Southeast Asia, a person can be thinner than a person in America, but have more insulin resistance. In fact, this is how fat cells look. In fact, this slide is very important, and I want you to share it with your friend. On the left, you see fat cells of a Caucasian. They're small. There are a lot of fat cells, but they're all very small. But on the right side, you see fat cells from a Southeast Asian person, where there are very few fat cells, but all of the fat cells are much, much bigger. So on average, someone in America will have more hyperplasia or smaller but more abundant fat cells. But in Southeast Asia, on average, someone will have fewer but much larger fat cells, more hypertrophy. And this is a problem because the hypertrophic, the fat cells, become very insulin resistant. In fact, it's kind of like a train. If we have fat cells that can grow through hyperplasia, it's like a train that can keep adding train cars. And every time the train car gets a little big, we just put another train car on. And then when that train car gets full, we just add another train car. And so every passenger is happy. There's plenty of room for everyone. However, the hypertrophy fat cells are like a train that can only have one single car. And insulin keeps shoving passengers, more and more passengers, into the train car, and all of the passengers are very unhappy. And because of this, some of the passengers start jumping out the window. And this is what happens when the fat cells get too fat. Insulin is trying to force the fat cell to keep growing, but now the fat cell starts leaking fat out. Now, the tissue that suffers the most is the liver. As the fat cells get too fat and they start leaking out their fats, it all starts to go into the liver. And because this happens so commonly in Southeast Asia, fatty liver disease is the most common liver problem in this part of the world. And it's all a result of fat cells. And as the fat accumulates, or as the liver gets fatter, it becomes very insulin resistant. Now, when the liver becomes insulin resistant, it starts to make different types of fats. And in particular, when the liver becomes insulin resistant, HDL production goes down, and then LDL and triglyceride production goes up. And this is the new number that you've learned about, the triglyceride to HDL ratio. So after you have taught your friend what insulin resistance is, they may ask you, how can I know whether I have insulin resistance? And you tell them, I have a new number for you. And remember, when the liver is insulin resistant, triglycerides are going up, but HDL is going down. So when you are teaching this to your friend, you show them this ratio, triglycerides divided by HDL. And if they have a number, if their ratio is less than 1.5, you tell them it's very good. However, if their number is 1.6 to 3.9, the new number, then you say, that does not look so good. And it's very possible that your friend will have a number that is 4 or above, and you tell them that's not good, that's very bad. Do not forget, this is the new number. Now also, I wanted to mention muscle. Muscle is so important. When we eat or drink something that has lots of sugar, most of that sugar will go into our muscle, and insulin helps the muscle take in that sugar. However, if the muscle becomes insulin resistant, now it cannot take in as much glucose, and the glucose levels in the blood start to go higher. Now, at this point, your friend may be feeling very discouraged. They may be very sad because they maybe have insulin resistance. And so they may ask you, what can I do about it? And you tell them there are 3 things you can do, and you have the tools to help them do this. First of all, you need to help them lower insulin levels. Then you need to help their bodies learn to burn fat better. And you need to help them learn to fast more frequently. They eat too often. Remember what we showed earlier, which is that when blood sugar levels go up, insulin goes up. So the first thing we need to do to lower insulin is to bring the blood sugar levels down. And as that comes down, then insulin can come down. And one way to do this very well is to focus on fiber. When fiber is higher in the diet, then blood sugar levels are lower, and that means insulin can be lower. But your friend may say, I don't know where to get good fiber to lower blood sugar. And you say, I have something that can help. And you say, I have a fiber that has been scientifically designed to help bring blood sugar down. And then you let them try some slim. Also, they may be worried about their triglyceride to HDL ratio. They may be worried about their new number. Well, you tell them, I have a fiber that can not only lower your triglycerides, but also increase your HDL, helping the number be better. And this is BioSlife C. You say this has been scientifically designed to help improve your triglycerides and HDL. But even still, you're not done yet. Your friend may say, what else can I do? And so you introduce your friends to something called chlorogenic acids. Chlorogenic acids have been scientifically proven to lower blood sugar and lower insulin levels. But your friend may ask you, well, where can I get chlorogenic acids? And you say, I have something that can help. Unicity has been designed to have higher levels of chlorogenic acids, and those chlorogenic acids will directly improve blood sugar and lower insulin. And this will help a lot, but now you go to number 2. By lowering insulin, you improve insulin resistance. But the next step is to tell them your fat cells are too big, and we need to burn more fat to shrink your fat cells. And they will ask you, well, how can I burn more fat? And you once again tell them, you need more chlorogenic acids. I want to teach you for just a moment how the body burns fat. When we burn fat, the fat must come into a part of our cell called the mitochondria. And when we want to get the fat into the mitochondria to burn the fat, it has to go in through a special doorway called CAT1. So your friend needs more CAT1 to burn more fat, and chlorogenic acids will directly increase CAT1. In fact, chlorogenic acids are so good at increasing fat burning that it increases fat burning by up to 24%. So you tell your friend when they're drinking Unicity, it's helping with fat burning. But also, chlorogenic acids help the muscle use more sugar, and so that helps bring blood sugar down and insulin down. But also, even fiber helps the body burn fat better. When we eat fiber, Our bodies do not get energy, but the fiber feeds the bacteria in our intestines, which then make something called short-chain fatty acids. These are small little fats that are specially made by our bodies when we eat fiber. But what is so interesting about these small little fats is that we do not store them as fat. These actually help the body burn more fat. So you tell them this is another reason why Slim is so good at helping improve metabolic health, because it increases fat burning by producing short-chain fats. But also, these short-chain fats help the muscle have a higher metabolism. When your friend eats Slim and it makes more short-chain fats, it increases the muscle using more sugar for energy, which lowers sugar and lowers insulin. By now, you have taught your friend how to lower insulin and how to burn fat better. Now your friend is ready for the third and final step of improving their metabolic health. When we fast, it helps our body burn more fat, and it lowers glucose and it lowers insulin. So fasting is very, very healthy. But you will tell your friend that it's very important to fast, but your friend may ask you, well, how can I fast easy? Because we don't like fasting. When we fast, it makes us hungry. So your friend may ask for help. If your friend is finding it hard to fast, you teach them about a molecule called theobromine. You tell them, you need more theobromine. Theobromine is something that tastes a little bitter when we eat it, but it has been shown to directly influence the brain and our fat cells to tell the body that we do not need to eat. Now your friend may say, well, where can I get theobromine? And you help them with one more pack of Unicity. You teach them that Unicity has been designed to have more theobromine to help it easier to fast. Now, the other way is once again telling your friend that short-chain fats from Slim can be very good to reduce hunger. Slim will turn into short-chain fats, and then the fats will tell the brain that we don't need to eat. So let's look over all of this very briefly again. You are talking to your friend, and you are teaching them the new science and the new number of the triglyceride to HDL ratio. Your friend will need help on how to improve their number, then you tell them there are 3 things you can do. And you tell them, I have 3 products that can help you do them all. Whether it's Unicity or BioSlife C or Slim, all of these products will help with each of the 3 steps they need to take to improve their metabolic health. So this is the new science and the new number, all to help you save 10. So this is what I want you to teach your friend. You teach them what is insulin resistance. You teach them where it comes from, which is from the fat cells getting too big. You teach them how important it is to know their new number, because that tells them their insulin resistance. With this, they will be ready to change, and then you teach them what they can do about it. And that is all. Thank you for being my students.
Và đó tất cả là những cái nội dung mà tôi muốn chia sẻ với các bạn. Xin trân trọng cảm ơn các bạn rất là nhiều. Xin trân trọng cảm ơn.